When I was a little girl, I loved to play this game. My father would come home in his navy white uniform, and I would stand at my bedroom door. "Private Blossom, reporting for inspection, sir." And then my dad would return my salute. He would come inside and look around, and then he'd come back with his report. "Private Blossom, you still need to put your shoes in the closet and pick up your Barbie dolls." "Yes, sir." He would return my salute again, he'd go downstairs, and I would go back to cleaning. I loved the playfulness and the rules of this game, which is why it was funny to find myself breaking the rules 10 years later while ripping my mop gear off during Army basic training. Mop gear is outerwear that you put on to protect yourself in the event of a chemical attack. It's heavy, it's made out of charcoal, and it makes everything that you do about 10 degrees hotter. So on this day, during basic training, we're outside, and it's in Alabama in August, so it's already about 100 degrees, and then we're in full mop gear, which includes a gas mask. So we're breathing in our own hot air. And everybody is sweating profusely. And all of a sudden, it feels like I have needles running down my arms, and I start to freak out. So I stop back to my pup tent thinking I'm by myself, and I start ripping off my mop gear, complaining, "Oh, this stuff is so disgusting." Turns out I wasn't actually alone. My senior drill sergeant had just walked up. "Blossom, what are you doing?" "Taking off my mop gear, senior drill sergeant." "Why are you doing that?" Because I got hot, senior drill sergeant." "Uh-huh." I glance at him, and I can see from the small smile on his face that he's actually amused. I'm busted, but this one is not a big deal. Thank God. I do a bunch of push-ups and promise not to do it again. Most of my memories of the 4 years that I served in the Army are like this one. They're lighthearted, except for 1 year when I don't have any memories like that. And before I take you to that year, I'll give you a little bit of background. So my father was a naval officer when I was growing up, and he and my mom and I lived on bases in Saudi Arabia and Japan. My mother would tell me stories of her skydiving while stationed in the Philippines in the Air Force. I have a grandfather who flew Air Force One for George H.W. Bush, and I have another grandfather who served on the USS Hornet. The list of my family members who served is long. So when I left basic training, I was excited about all the camaraderie and the feeling that I just conquered some big challenge, and I was proud to be going to Fort Carson, Colorado, and carrying my family's legacy forward. But there were two things that immediately caught my attention when I arrived. The first one was this comment: "The men you're about to work with aren't used to working with women." I filed that under uh-oh, but we'll come back to it. The second thing that I noticed was that I was getting hit on all the time. And you might think, like, that doesn't sound so bad. But if you imagine you're getting in your car, out of your car, going to the grocery store, going for a walk, it's happening literally everywhere you go, that it felt like I was a blank movie screen sometimes that desire was being projected onto. It was happening so much, in fact, I started wearing a wedding ring in the first few weeks thinking maybe that was going to stop it. Turns out that little piece of fake gold made no difference whatsoever. So I developed a couple of coping strategies. The first one was what I call defensive flirting. Some of you may have seen this one before. Flirting at its best is an exchange of energy. It's playful, creative, sexy, edgy. Defensive flirting is exchanging just enough of that energy so that when the moment came that I could slide away, I could do so without it seeming abrupt and without pissing off the guy, because I learned really quickly that option was always on the table. The second coping strategy that I developed was to simply become stone-faced. No open door, no friendliness. It's uncomplicated, and it works. But it also became part of a troubling pattern for me throughout that year. There were times when simply sliding away or becoming stone-faced weren't options. One day I was working in the mess hall checking people in for lunch, and a couple of people came up to talk to me. And we talk about what we do, what our jobs are, and I say that I'm 54 chemical, which in Army speak means 54 Bravo, which in Army speak means that I'm chemical. These guys say that they're helicopter pilots. And then they ask if myself and a friend would like to go for a ride. I'm the adventurous sort, So the answer to, do you want to go for a helicopter ride, is always going to be yes. So the four of us meet up. We put on our headphones so we can hear each other above the noise. And I'm watching, fascinated, as they flip switches and push buttons. And I feel the whirl of the blades above us spinning faster, 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 faster. And then suddenly there's that exhilarating experience of leaving the earth behind us. And I'm just settling into it when I hear through the headphones, how do you like to have sex? I bet she likes to be on top because she wants to be in control. Nah, she wants it from behind. And I am completely frozen. I don't know how to handle this situation. So I start trying to change the subject. What's that out there? How fast does this thing go? How often do you guys fly? And they ignore it. And they just continue with this line of questioning until finally we land, my friend and I, we hightail it. Then there were the guys that I mentioned that I worked with. On a regular basis, these guys would say things so matter-of-factly, like, women can't be trusted. Women don't work as hard as men. And how can you trust something that bleeds 7 days a month and doesn't die? Linking our trustworthiness to our biology. There were the times of the occasional groping, forced kissing. I'll spare you the details. During this time, one of the women that I served with decided that she wanted to take it to leadership because she was dealing with it too. And I watched her walk up to our commanding officer, hopeful maybe something was going to change. The conversation between them lasted about a minute. She turned around and walked back to me, her face now tight. And I asked, what happened? And she, with a look of disgust, said, he basically just told me boys will be boys. The message was received. We were on our own. So I began to adopt personality traits that I associated with masculinity. Tough, unemotional, laugh at jokes that are actually, whew, that was pretty offensive. I was trying to seem like a man to the men around me so they wouldn't see me as different. I mean, this, of course, was not the result. Look at me, even in baggy camouflage. It's obvious I'm a woman. The result was that I was pushing down emotions in service of feeling safe. I began to live in this box, and inside the box was anger and fear and shame. And outside the box was vulnerability and empathy and nurturing and joy and ease, all the stuff that makes life so worth living. And it would only get farther away from me as the year progressed. And then I connected with somebody. And he and I had a great time. So we started dating. And there was a lot of joking around in the beginning. And he was a soldier on the same base. And one night we went to a party off base. And we were walking back, just the two of us, at night to my car. And all of a sudden, I found myself slammed up against a wall. And I was stunned. What just happened and why? He would later bite me in the face and slam my head against a car window. It was humiliating, and the shame began to rise. Because for as long as I can remember, I have identified as someone who is strong, independent, and rebellious. These are core to my identity, and they were all being violated. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere in my life, including inside myself. And the thing about shame is that it is possessive. Shame tells you to keep secrets. It tells you to isolate yourself. And at its worst, it brings a lethal absence of hope. And one night, between the criticisms and the abuse and the lack of understanding of how to manage all of the emotions that I was having, I just needed a way out. So I took a handful of bright blue sleeping pills, a big glass of water, and I went to sleep. And I woke up in the middle of the night to find that I was slapping my hands against the wall to make the stinging pain stop. So I called my boyfriend, and he took me to the hospital. The military doctor took one look at me, knew it was a suicide attempt, and decided he was going to have my stomach pumped, even though by that point, it wasn't medically necessary. Now, a stomach pump is no walk in the park. You're having a tube stuffed down your throat while your body is trying to kick it back out. So when it's finally over, I'm laying there now recovering from a stomach pump and not feeling even this much better about my life. And in walks a military chaplain, here to help. This guy looks like he's in about his 60s, kind of shuffles over to the hospital bed, leans over, pushes his glasses up on his nose, and says, "So, What's your problem? What's my problem? I didn't even know how to articulate what was wrong for myself, much less share it with anybody else. I certainly wasn't going to start with that guy with that approach. So I turned my head to the wall, and I just stare, feeling so alone. And I overhear him describing me as defiant. That year in Colorado taught me that we must rethink masculinity. Currently, masculinity tells young boys, you cannot be like a girl, you can't be gay, and you have to man up. So let's break that down. To not be like a girl means what? That you're not allowed to be empathetic, or nurturing, or compassionate? We've taken those traits and then feminized them and made them wrong. But when we do that, we disconnect boys from a part of their own inner life. And to not be gay means what? That if you're straight and a boy, that you're not allowed to have emotional intimacy or physical affection with other boys? This creates an isolation that perpetuates itself into adulthood. And when you're being told to man up, you're being told to dominate over your emotions, you're being taught how to use your power over your emotions, over other people, rather than being taught how to use your power for something, for other people, for your own good. We all, men and women, are responsible for expanding the definition of masculinity to include vulnerability, emotional intimacy, and physical affection as sources of strength for men. But right now, this is the impact masculinity is having on the military. 20% of all women serving in the armed forces are sexually assaulted by the men they serve with. It's not just women. In 1 year, 20,000 men were sexually assaulted by the men they serve with. Should sexual assault be listed as a hazard of the job? Might go to war, check. Might get raped, check. Sign on the dotted line, please. And the impact of this is going far beyond the military. It's Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, Louis C.K., Chris Rose, Matt Lauer. The list just keeps getting longer. And it includes US presidents. And sure, we could blame this on biology. Well, it's just how we're wired, it's testosterone. Or we can blame it on mental health. Those people are just crazy. Or we can consciously choose to create a world in which, on a daily basis, we unleash the fullest expression of kindness and empathy from our girls and our boys. And here are some questions we need to start asking ourselves. For the men in the audience, what does being a man mean to you? And where did you get the idea from? From your father, brother, peers, porn? What mask are you wearing? You wearing the mask of toughness like I did? The mask of humor, you've always got a joke? The mask of competition, you've always got to be better than everybody else? What do you believe would happen if you took off that mask and let people see you? How often do you share your feelings with the boys in your life? How comfortable are you crying in front of the boys in your life, or in front of anyone for that matter? For the women in the audience, what assumptions do you make about men that keep the conversation from going deeper? I've done a lot of work with women, and I hear some of the assumptions. They don't care. They think they're entitled to whatever they want. And even if there's a kernel of truth in that, there's still more to the story, and if we're going to improve it, we have to collectively think deeper about these challenges. In the years since the Army, as I've worked to remove my own masks, and continue to do it, and I've worked with men and women in companies, I've come to see that when we remove our masks, we get this beautiful chance to turn loneliness into connection, assumption into understanding, and fear into love. Imagine what would become possible if boys were allowed to have the same highs and lows that girls are. Imagine what would be possible if adults intentionally created safe spaces for boys to share their feelings with each other. Imagine what would be possible If instead of being told to man up, boys were taught how to reach out to a friend? Ask your father, your brother, your friend, your coworker, what's behind your mask? His answer may surprise you, and it may just save his life. Thank you.